Yeah.
And so they've all probably gone through these breakups, and I'll need to kind of reassess and yeah, be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think you also need to learn how to be vulnerable, which again can only be done when you trust yourself and your instincts and you know who you are and you're comfortable with yourself and you've done this process with yourself
Yeah,
first. And then
absolutely.
once you do that, you're more capable of being vulnerable in a healthy way, where you're not doing it because you want to force a connection or you
Exactly.
want to force them to get to know you, you want to, force this thing. Like a lot of times, like when we're in an unhealthy place, and I've done this a lot of times, and you'll have a crush on someone or you're infatuated by them, you want to force a connection and you really want it to work. So you're going to force yourself to be vulnerable with them, to say, here we have vulnerability. And here I could talk to him about this, and he knows me that, and he knows that. And that's not real because you're forcing it, and and that's not healthy. And then that's going to cause you a lot of trust issues, or it's maybe forcing you also to talk about things that you're not ready to, or with someone that you don't trust enough, or someone who's not going to protect you as they
Yeah.
should. And it also in the aspect of how to convey your vulnerability, when to just spill it out and when to be cautious, and also how to, there's a time in my life where I would be vulnerable, and it will come out more dramatic, with more tears and with more scar, because the scars were more like fresh or whatever it is, and I was less in a less healthy place in my life or whatever it is. And today, where I can be vulnerable but still very composed, or just not spill everything out all at once, or not do it just, you know, in this, I don't know, in this, or in a whiny tone, or in a
Yeah,
some way
exactly.
that can be conveyed differently. And one last thing that came up, that you said something, you can't remember what you said exactly, but you said this word of like trusting them with your vulnerability. There was something you said over there where I think you also want to be able to be vulnerable with, no, sorry. You want to, being vulnerable with someone also helps you understand the other person and see how they react to your vulnerability. I
Yeah, I
can't
was
remember
when
how
it
it
was
connected
about
with it.
I was talking, you said something about wasting your vulnerability, and I said it's not
Yeah,
wasting. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly, exactly. So then that sort of also gives you a picture, like how do they react to your vulnerability?
yeah,
And that will tell you a lot about the person.
yeah. Completely agree with that. And it is a bit of a risk. I mean, being vulnerable, it's a bit of a risk. And I had a huge,
Yeah,
not a huge argument, but like a heated debate with my godmother around vulnerability, and she doesn't like the word. And I said, but it is being vulnerable, because she argues that talking about this type of thing is showing strength and things like that. It's like, I agree,
yeah,
it's showing strength of character, but it is opening up your soft spot that,
yeah,
that it's easily kind of targetable. um if you're talking about my own relationship with JT, where I'm definitely not going to talk about his soft vulnerable spots, but it's stuff that came up fairly early in our relationship, about his past, about his parents and things like that. And yeah, he showed strength in character about talking about it with me. And now,
yeah,
it's the sad the scary truth is that I have the power to hurt him with it.
yeah,
And that's
exactly.
and that's what being vulnerable is. It's, if you're going to talk about something, that there's a risk of the other person hurting you, then that's vulnerability. And it's not a bad thing, but that's just the way it is. And that's what all of these men and women have been doing in the first episode, of just opening up. And And yeah, you have relationships where you don't have to be vulnerable because it is purely superficial and whatever. But these are the exceptions. Like, if you want something that is lasting, you want to be able to share everything with this person and come home to someone that is, if I have a really bad, so yesterday, not yesterday, day before yesterday, I had a really bad day at work. I just called JT. I cried about it. I was really unhappy about it. He was just
Mm-hmm.
there, and he kind of witnessed it and was like, "What do you need me to do?" I was like, "Nothing. I just needed to say it." And because I was so, it wasn't really being vulnerable, kind of, but not really. But I felt safe in the fact that he was going to be there to receive what I had to give in a safe and comfortable way. And that's what you want in a
Yeah.
long-lasting relationship. And so if you are able to do that, I agree with you, healthily, not in a dramatic way, not in a way, attention-seeking way, of just healthily sharing
Yeah.
your soft spots, and it's received well, then it's a good, it's a very good omen. It's not the only one that you need, but if you don't have it, then it's a red flag.
Yeah. I think it first of all needs to be gradual. Also to not
Sure.
overwhelm not yourself and not the other person that you're dating. And also to just be able to process it as you progress in your relationship. And it also has to be consistent. You were saying now that, you're almost 2 years, I think, into your relationship with JT,
Yeah.
having his child, and you're still being vulnerable with him in new and different ways. And I think that's so important to maintain a good, healthy relationship that you can trust and that you know each other and that you're sort of up to date with each other's
Shit.
feelings and where you are and who you are
Yeah.
and everything. So yeah, so it's like this process of continuing to be vulnerable, even if you feel like the person already knows you and they've already talked about it or they're already this. I think it's part of being in a healthy relationship. It's continuing to talk about it and continuing to be vulnerable and to not like, get into this routine where you're eventually, okay, we had our vulnerable time in the beginning and now we're just in this routine and we each have our own thing. We don't need to be vulnerable anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's, you kind of, it kind of made me think about these YouTube apologies, or like public
Oh,
apologies.
God.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about the slap with Will Smith and things.
My God, yeah, the whole thing is just
And
ridiculous.
sometimes, so these apologies, they can't, and you can tell that the person is just I was going through a rough time in my life.
Yeah.
But Will Smith, it came out so insincere because he did exactly what you said,
Yeah.
of just trying to be vulnerable, but in a for a specific reason and
Hmm.
objective, which is like, well, that's not being vulnerable. That's you. I would much rather you say, "Listen, I fucked up. I
Yeah.
fucked up. I'm sorry. There's I acted badly, and trying to pretend that there's stuff going on is disingenuous. And I think that's whether or not what he said was true, you could tell that he was just doing it in a way that was just not genuine, and that's not good. And I think that's the thing. You don't, being vulnerable is not the answer to everything. Like, sometimes you fuck up, you just need to apologize for
Yeah.
fucking up. You can have your reasons for fucking up. I was drunk, I was tired, he pissed me off in the backstage earlier, whatever, but I fucked up.
Yeah. I
Vulnerability
felt it
isn't
was
gonna
also a bit of like, sorry?
no, vulnerability isn't gonna get you out of everything.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times it's also just to like in Hebrew we say lisaben v, like to mark it to just check mark something off of your kind of
Yeah.
list of like, yeah, I can say that I did it. I apologized,
Yeah.
I put it out there. And it's just like, no, that's not, you're not doing something just to mark it off your list to say that I did this. You're not being vulnerable just to show that you're being vulnerable
Yeah.
because, you know, if it's fake, then you're basing a relationship on something that isn't authentic, it isn't real, and you're just trying to force it, maybe, or you're just doing it because you have to, or you feel pressured, or whatever it is. And I think it has to come from a real place. and and I think with the right person, it comes naturally and it's easier. Um, so that's why, yeah, I think you have to be careful with who you open up with and are vulnerable with. But again, when you trust yourself and when you're vulnerable with yourself first, then you also know how to make that distinction and how to, you know, control your vulnerability and not let others control it for you. And I think also, when you're in a comfortable place, it's more comfortable to be vulnerable and and you have enough confidence and you've been through it all and you've processed it with yourself. So it's much harder for people to use your vulnerability against
Yeah.
you. And it's easier for you to say, I was just vulnerable, I was strong, I opened up, and they didn't take it well, or they reacted immaturely, or they used it against me, or whatever it is. And you're strong enough to say that then the issue is with them and not with me,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. As soon as you're kind of, it's a good way of saying it. As soon as you're sort of safe in your vulnerable subjects,
Yeah,
then nobody can use it against you.
exactly. And we can choose, I believe we can choose when to get insulted, when to get hurt. Obviously, not all the time because we're human and in, we have emotional reactions that we can't control. But I think again, when you work on yourself and when you take time to be strong and get to know yourself better and have a good relationship with yourself, then it's much easier for you to control your reactions, your emotions, and who has the ability to impact you and affect your feelings and
Yeah.
whatever it is. And you're more composed and you have a better reaction to things and you just know how when to let go and things like that. So
Yeah. I think that's a good ending note.
yeah,
Um,
it's yeah. I think there's a lot to talk about vulnerability. I think even
yeah,
what that discussion you said you had with your stepmother, not stepmother, your godmother, where
yes.
even just that nuance of like the word and how showing vulnerability is actually a strength, but like, it's a lot of yeah,
Yeah, it's
there's a lot to talk about here,
but we are sticking to the program of
yes.
not going
So
all over the place. So go.
yeah, let us know if vulnerability comes easy for you. Do you think it's important to be vulnerable early on? How were you vulnerable in your relationships?
And I would ask women, how do you feel about men crying?
Ooh, that's a good question.
See how that
Yeah.
goes. In the end,
That's a
my
topic in
mission,
itself.
my mission now is to watch all of Love is Blind so that we can record, and so these will come afterwards. But yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, like, follow, subscribe everywhere you are, anywhere you are. And yeah,
Speak to you soon.
till we speak soon. Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.